The bustling noise of JFK Airport echoed all around. Rolling suitcases, boarding calls, tired families lined up for early morning flights. Travelers rushed between gates, earbuds in, coffee cups in hand. Amid the chaos, no one noticed the elderly black woman stepping carefully through the terminal. Her name was Ms. Laverne Johnson, 82 years old, wrinkled hands, cane in one, a worn leather satchel in the other. Her posture was straight, proud, but every step was measured, not because she was weak, but because she'd learned long ago never to rush for anyone. She stood in line for first-class check-in, breathing quietly, waiting her turn. The airline attendant behind the counter glanced up, then immediately looked away. Her name tag read Courtney, early 30s, pale pink lipstick, irritated eyes. She smiled warmly at the young white couple in front of Ms. Laverne, helped them quickly, even complimented their baby. But when Ms. Laverne stepped forward, Courtney's expression changed, cold, mechanical. "Yes," she said flatly. Ms. Laverne offered a kind smile. "Good morning, dear. I'm on the 9:20 to Atlanta. First class." Courtney raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? First class?" Ms. Laverne chuckled lightly. "I've been sure since I bought the ticket." Courtney sighed and held out a hand. "Ticket and ID." Ms. Laverne reached into her satchel slowly. Arthritis made things take time. Behind her, the line grew. People shifted impatiently. Courtney tapped her nails against the desk. Ms. Laverne handed over the documents. Courtney glanced at the ID, then at Ms. Laverne. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm going to have to verify this with a supervisor," she said abruptly. "Just wait to the side." "But why?" Ms. Laverne asked gently. "It's a valid ticket, paid in full." Courtney didn't answer. She'd already turned her back and waved for the next person in line. People stared. A security officer walked over, confused. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" Ms. Laverne stood quietly beside the counter, dignified, patient, humiliated. "No problem," Courtney replied. "She's just confused about her ticket class." Ms. Laverne didn't flinch. She'd heard that tone before. Dismissive, patronizing. Coded in the kind of polite cruelty that only comes from people who think they'll never be challenged. She looked around. No one stood up for her. Not yet. She adjusted her scarf and waited. Because she'd waited before. In diner booths, on protest lines, in jail cells during the 1960s. But today would be different. Today, they'd learn who she really was. The line at the check-in desk moved forward, but Ms. Laverne remained off to the side, standing, not seated, though her legs ached. Still holding her cane, still calm, still waiting for someone to treat her like a person. Behind the kiosk, Courtney pretended to be busy with other passengers. She laughed at a joke from a businessman, printed boarding passes, smiled when it was easy. But every so often, she glanced sideways at Ms. Laverne, her lips tightening, not with guilt, but with annoyance. "You can't just let anyone claim first class," she whispered to her coworker, too low for Ms. Laverne to hear. "You'd be surprised what people try." A few feet away, Daniel Kim, a tech analyst on his way to a conference, was watching. He'd noticed the moment things shifted, how quickly the tone changed when the older woman stepped up, how fast she was brushed aside. Now, as he waited to check his own bag, he discreetly raised his phone and hit record. He wasn't a troublemaker, not usually, but something about this felt wrong. Ms. Laverne stood quietly, her hands folded over the handle of her cane. Her suitcase, small, old, but well kept, sat at her feet. A supervisor finally arrived, a tall man with a badge and tired eyes. Courtney quickly whispered to him, pointing at Ms. Laverne. He nodded and approached her. "Ma'am," he said, trying for polite, "we've had a bit of confusion with your ticket. Do you mind showing us your ID again?" "I've already shown it," she said softly. "Yes, but—" He glanced at Courtney, who looked away. "We just want to double-check the name." "Of course," Ms. Laverne replied. She opened her satchel again, hands slower now. Her fingers shook slightly, not from fear, but from age. She handed him the same ID, same ticket. He looked at both. Looked at her, back at the documents. The ticket clearly read, Laverne E. Johnson, first class, confirmed, and the ID matched. Perfectly. The supervisor blinked, realization dawning. "This is fine," he mumbled. You're cleared to check in. I was cleared 10 minutes ago, she said, her voice still calm, but cutting now. It was your staff who didn't believe me. The supervisor didn't respond. Courtney turned away, pretending not to hear. Daniel, still recording, captured the moment when Ms. Laverne walked back to the desk, slow, dignified, and quietly handed over her bag to be checked. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand anything. But Daniel knew he had to post this, because what he saw wasn't just a delay, it was disrespect. And it happened too easily. That video, just 90 seconds long, would be online before Ms. Laverne even reached the gate. And by the time her plane landed in Atlanta, the whole country would know her name and what she'd done long before this moment ever happened. By the time Ms. Laverne's plane touched down in Atlanta, she had no idea that the world outside the airport had already begun to change. 30,000 feet in the air, while she quietly read a worn paperback and sipped orange juice, the video posted by Daniel Kim was climbing through the internet like wildfire. The caption was simple. This elderly black woman was treated like a criminal for having a first-class ticket. The staff didn't even apologize. Do better, aid JFK Airport. Within hours, the clip had millions of views. Thousands of comments poured in. Who is this queen? Someone find her. Why do we treat our elders like this? Shameful. I hope she sues. But also, she looks familiar. It didn't take long. A civil rights historian from Howard University shared the video, but she added context. That's Laverne E. Johnson. She marched with Dr. King. She was jailed in Selma in '65. She founded 3 schools in underserved communities. That woman isn't just some old lady. She's a national treasure. The comments exploded. Wait, the Laverne Johnson? She's in our kids' history books. You mean to tell me the airline profiled a civil rights legend? News outlets picked it up. Articles followed. Unsung hero of the movement mistaken for vagrant at JFK. Airport staff embarrassed after humiliating living icon. At JFK, the staff had gone about their day. Courtney hadn't thought twice about the interaction. To her, it was just another morning of dealing with difficult passengers. But by noon, her manager was at her desk, iPad in hand, face pale. You need to see this, he said. The moment Courtney watched herself on screen, coldly brushing aside a woman who had marched for voting rights and had personally met Rosa Parks, she didn't speak. She just sat there. And for the first time that day, she listened. Meanwhile, back in Atlanta, Ms. Laverne stood at baggage claim alone. She had no idea yet that the mayor's office had called. No idea that her photo was on the front page of the New York Times. She just adjusted her coat, picked up her small suitcase, and hailed a cab. Because Laverne Johnson didn't do what she did for recognition. She did it because it was right. And now, the world was finally remembering who she really was. The morning after her arrival, Ms. Laverne Johnson woke up to an unexpected knock at her niece's door. A young man stood outside, nervously holding a local newspaper. His hands trembled as he handed it to her. "Ma'am," he said, "you're on the front page." She adjusted her glasses and looked down. There, in full color, was the photo of her at the airport check-in desk, standing tall beside her suitcase. Civil rights pioneer dismissed at JFK. Nation reacts. And beneath that, a second headline. From Selma to Terminal 4. America's memory lapses again. She blinked slowly, not out of pride, but out of a deep, bittersweet ache. For decades, she'd fought to be seen. Now in her 80s, injustice had made her visible once more. Later that afternoon, her phone began to ring nonstop. Local stations, national networks, historians, teachers, senators, each one wanting her to speak, to comment, to explain how it felt. She declined them all until a call came from the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. "We've just confirmed," the voice said, "you've been nominated to receive a posthumous honor while very much alive. We'd be deeply honored if you'd accept it in person." Ms. Laverne smiled softly. So, the world finally caught up, That weekend, she was flown first class, this time with no side eyes, no delays, to Washington, D.C. At the museum's Hall of Icons, she stood before a packed audience. Civil rights leaders, students, journalists, people who'd never heard of her before that week, now hanging on every word. She walked to the podium slowly, carefully, her cane tapping against the polished wood floor. "I didn't come here today because of what happened at the airport," she began. "I came here because it's still happening. Not just to me, but to too many." She looked out into the crowd. "I've been called a hero these past few days, but I want to remind you, heroes aren't born in headlines. They're born in quiet acts of courage, repeated until the world finally listens." Applause filled the hall. Back in New York, Courtney watched the live stream from her break room. She didn't cry, but she didn't move either. For the first time in years, she felt small. Not because she'd been exposed, but because she'd ignored something sacred, and now the entire country had seen it. The official statement came 3 days after Ms. Laverne's Smithsonian appearance. It wasn't a phone call. It wasn't a personal letter. It was a press release, drafted by the airline's corporate PR team and posted to their social media. "We at Atlantic Air deeply regret the treatment of Ms. Laverne E. Johnson, an esteemed civil rights activist and American icon. This incident does not reflect the values of our company, and we have initiated a full review of our staff training protocols. We offer our sincerest apologies and have reached out to Ms. Johnson directly to express this personally." It was formal, cold, polished, and it was also too late. The public wasn't impressed. She deserved a real apology, not a headline. "The woman sat at your counter while your employee humiliated her. Where was your respect then? If she wasn't famous, would this statement even exist?" Reporters hounded Ms. Laverne for a reaction. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she said nothing. Not until a handwritten note arrived at her niece's home, from Courtney. It was short, uneven handwriting, raw. "Ms. Johnson, I know an apology isn't enough, but I want to say it anyway. I judged you by your age, your skin, your clothes. I didn't recognize the grace standing in front of me. I'm ashamed, not just of what I did, but how quickly I did it. I've requested to be moved off the floor to retrain from the bottom. If you ever speak publicly again, I'll be listening. Courtney Ms." Laverne read the note slowly, then folded it gently and placed it in a wooden box beside her bed. The same box that held letters from Dr. King, voter registration cards from the 1960s, and her original mugshot from Birmingham. The next day, she made her own statement, a short one. Standing in front of a small group of high school students during a planned visit, she said, "Apologies matter, but what matters more is what comes after them. The measure of a person is not in whether they make mistakes, it's whether they learn and who they become next." The students nodded. Some even clapped. A reporter in the back quickly posted her words online. They were shared thousands of times by nightfall. And just like that, Ms. Laverne taught the world how to forgive without forgetting, and how to respond to injustice with power, not poison. What began as a single phone-recorded video had now turned into something far greater, a movement of reflection, education, and reparation. By the end of the week, a member of Congress introduced a resolution on the House floor, and the Laverne Johnson Dignity in Service Act, a federal push to require all airline and transportation staff undergo annual training in racial sensitivity, elder care awareness, and implicit bias. The resolution also proposed a national observance, Laverne Johnson Day, to be recognized every year on the anniversary of her arrest during the Selma Voting Rights March. The idea swept through schools, organizations, and news outlets. Students began creating posters with her quotes. Libraries set up civil rights exhibits in her name. Universities reached out, hoping she'd deliver commencement addresses. But when Ms. Laverne was asked by a reporter how she felt about the idea of a national holiday in her name, she paused for a long time. Then, she said simply, "Only if the day is about the people, not just the pain." She didn't want a spotlight. She wanted a ripple. So she asked that instead of parades or hashtags, the day be used for service, feeding the hungry, helping elders, volunteering at shelters, sitting down with people you usually pass by. "The best way to honor me," she said, "is to see the people you don't normally see, and treat them like they matter. Her words were printed on billboards across the country. Airlines across America adopted their own revised training programs. A few even invited Ms. Laverne to help build them. She refused payment. She didn't want profit from her humiliation. She wanted prevention for others. Even Courtney, once silent, defensive, ashamed, joined a local community center's volunteer program. She began working weekends delivering meals to homebound elders. No one told her to. She just did it. It was a calm spring afternoon when Ms. Laverne returned to JFK Airport for the first time since the incident. She was there not for a flight, but for a ceremony, one she had neither requested nor expected. Escorted by two airport directors and a small group of city officials, she walked slowly through Terminal 4, where everything had unfolded weeks before. The same walk, the same floor tiles, the same check-in area. Only this time, the people stared for a different reason. Travelers paused and watched. Some recognized her. Others learned as they leaned in and asked questions. There were no cameras, no news crews, just a quiet unveiling of something long overdue. A new sign had been installed above Gate 22 in bronze, the Laverne E. Johnson Boarding Gate, in honor of dignity, courage, and a lifetime of service. Let every journey that begins here begin with respect. Ms. Laverne stood in front of it, cane in hand, tears quietly brimming. One of the attendants who had ignored her that day, not Courtney, but another who had remained silent, approached her nervously. "I didn't say anything when it happened," she said softly. "I wanted to. I didn't. I'm sorry." Ms. Laverne reached out and gently touched her hand. "Next time," she said, "speak." The woman nodded, eyes damp. Nearby, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Who is that lady?" he whispered. The mother bent down and said, "She helped make the world better a long time ago, and she still is." As Ms. Laverne turned to leave, a voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we dedicate this gate not to a celebrity, but to a citizen, one who reminded us all what honor truly looks like." The airport fell still for a brief sacred moment. And then it moved on. Flights called, bags rolled, lives continued. But something had changed. Not just the gate, not just the headlines. The air itself felt different, as if it now carried quietly the weight of someone who had stood tall in the face of indignity and answered it with grace. As Ms. Laverne stepped outside into the sunlight, she exhaled slowly, not in relief, but in peace, because she had spent her life opening doors for others, and now one had finally been opened in her name.